I'm going to answer today the question that angers me the most. This person says, I will honestly say that I'm wanting to hear more of the actual crap that the leaders have done because I never got the awareness that the co founder was unkind or evil. And probably I need to hear this so I can walk away with more ease and awareness of why I'm walking away and don't want to rely on someone else's awareness. First of all, you are asking me to give you the reason rather than actually looking at what do you need in order to make the decision that's best for you. So we all get to make our own decisions here. What I'm trying to do on this podcast is give you information on things that you need to educate yourself on in order to make an informed decision, in order to have critical thinking, and in order to understand what groups like this do to people so that you can't make an informed decision, so that you aren't actually consenting, and so that you are being deceived, coerced, you're under mind control and other sources of undue influence. So I am trying to educate people so that they can actually be aware of things like cults and cultic tactics and behaviors, so you don't get sucked in, or if you are sucked in, so you can get out and not substitute someone else's agenda for your life. So number two, what would you have to hear in order to justify leaving? What exactly are you looking for? Because so many people want me to give you the smoking gun, and I'm not sure what story you would be bad enough that would make you want to leave. There are lots of examples that I've told already in these videos. If you look on my Facebook page, which I'll link to below, there are literally hundreds of other people giving more stories. And I will do one more for you. I'm going to link to an article that just came out a few days ago outlining how this group played a major role in a murder-suicide involving a 9-year-old child. So I'm not sure what it is that you're going to have to hear in order to, as you say, have more ease and awareness of why you're walking away. For me, it was an accumulation of things, and Janja Lalich calls it the moment your shelf breaks. So how this works is you're in a group or you're in a relationship. Maybe it's one-on-one with a partner, or maybe it's in a group, and something happens that doesn't fit what they say that they are about. So for instance, if it's a relationship and this person is saying that they love and they care about you, but then they gaslight you, all right? And they say something to you to make you feel like, well, you're just going crazy. You go like, that's weird. And you kind of like put it on this shelf because you don't know how to, you can't make it make sense with the picture that you have or the worldview you have of this group. So for me, it was like, this group is ultimately good. This group is creating more empowerment and consciousness on the planet. So when they would do something that didn't match that, whether it was to me or I watched them do it to someone else, which was all the time, it was like I would have to just put that evidence that didn't match that on the shelf. So I would watch them be horribly abusive to somebody, usually verbally, and I would just have to take that and go, that doesn't fit, so I put it on the shelf. And over years and years of putting things on the shelf, one day I thought to myself, what is it that they've actually done and created in the world that is this ultimate big mission that they're about? Like, what have they actually been created? And I couldn't think of anything. And I went to put that on the shelf, and the whole effing shelf came crumbling down. So if you're looking for a smoking gun, it's like you have your own shelf. Okay, maybe you haven't had enough things that go on the shelf to make it come crashing down yet. And that's okay. It took me 12 years. So the third thing is, if you are thinking of joining a group, or you're wondering if the group that you're in is healthy or unhealthy, ask the members and the leaders questions and see how your questions are received. Are they open to being questioned? Are they listening, or do they shut down the line of questioning, turn it around on you, and accuse you of fighting, defending, or being suppressive? Are they willing to be criticized or hear things that aren't entirely complimentary? Things that could point to problematic behavior, whether it's in the leadership or in the members, in the group. There's so many examples that, again, if you look for it, you can find of people pointing out to this group problematic behavior. Are they addressing those things? Or are they doing DARVO, which is where you deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender? So that is what perpetrators of wrongdoing do. And it's a common manipulation strategy of psychological abusers. So a healthy group will hear, especially when it's coming from multiple people, and they will address the issue. They will find a way to fix the problem. They won't turn it around on the members and make it about them. So Dr. Stephen Hassan wrote a book called Combating Cult Mind Control, and he has an entire section on how to critically think about and consider a group, because not all groups are unhealthy. Not all groups are cults. But before you join, maybe you have already joined, you can still ask these questions. And the questions that he gives, I'm going to read a few of them. He poses in particular how you would ask them to a recruiter of the group, because typically groups like these have a recruitment scheme of some sort. So in my group, it was called facilitators. So they would go and facilitate classes, and essentially they're recruiting more people into the group. So here's how to protect yourself. So you can ask the recruiter, how long have you been with this group? Are you trying to recruit me into any type of organization? So a lot of times there is some sort of introductory level product or class or thing that you know, if it's a religious group, it might be Bible study or whatever. It's something that doesn't quite give you the picture that they're trying to get you into something when they actually are trying to get you into something. Can you tell me the names of all the other organizations that are affiliated with your group? So many cults have multiple organizations and companies underneath it or attached to it. The Moonies and Scientology, for example, have front groups to presumably combat trafficking. So the cult that I was in, the leader owns something like 69 or 70 different companies in multiple countries. You might ask yourself, why does one individual need that many companies? Is it really diversifying revenue, or is there something nefarious going on there? There's definitely knowing that this organization that you are in or being recruited into is affiliated with these other groups is important information. And are they upfront about that, or do they try and hide it? Who is the top leader? Tell me about their background and qualifications. Do they have a criminal record? So these questions are not meant to be accusatory. It's actually just, if this is a legitimate group, they would be able to answer these questions and not get defensive about it. So the leader of the cult I was in came from Scientology, was a real estate agent, and had gone bankrupt twice before starting this cult. So although you can find that out, they're not exactly upfront about that, because that's not a great marketing point. So if you look at what the classes are and the sessions that this guy is doing, you would assume that he has some sort of psychological background, or give him the authority to speak on topics like abuse, relationships, finances. You know, it's like this group and a lot of these large group awareness trainings, the leaders don't have any credentials, no type of psychological degrees or anything like that. What they do instead is they discredit things in this reality, like licensure, authority, expertise, things like that. And so it doesn't matter. It's like the fact that they have had abuse gives them the right to counsel and do sessions and classes about abuse. That's not necessarily true. Back to the questions. What does your group believe? Does it believe that the ends justify the means? And is deception allowed in any circumstances? So if you ask them this, well, if they're upfront, in the group that I was in, they reframe manipulation and deception and absolutely believe that the ends justify the means. So they give you a different definition of manipulation that makes you feel like it's a good thing because you are actually helping someone to change something that they may not be able to do it under their own free will. So you are manipulating them into something that's actually good for them. So also, you'll hear the members justify the things that the leader does because they love the leader and they believe that he is a good person and that he's doing good in the world. So that the ends justify the means. What are members expected to do once they join? Do I have to quit school or work or donate my money and property or cut myself off from family members and friends who might oppose my membership? What did you do for a living before you joined the group, and what do you do for a living now? So if you're asking this question of someone who's trying to recruit you, in my group, they will tell you, of course, we don't require you to quit school, work, or cut yourself off from your family, and you don't have to come work for us. But if you actually look at the number of people who have been in it for any length of time, how many of them have quit other things that they used to be a part of, had less and less and less connection to their family, stopped doing other types of work, started working for the group or facilitating classes under the group's pyramid, and have basically become a one-dimensional person who that's all that they do. So they will not say that they require you to do these things, but if you look at the behaviors of people in the group over time, that's exactly what ends up happening. Is your group considered controversial by anyone? If other people are critical of it, what are their main objections? So this is important because if you're doing actual critical research, you want to know who opposes this group and why are they critical of it. It doesn't mean that they're right, but if you just turn a blind eye to that, you will get duped. So when I first came along to this group, there was a lot of talk about it being a cult, and there were people, whenever I would post stuff about it, that would say, isn't that a cult? And I asked the leader, how do I handle these things like on social media? And he said, ask them, because people would say, oh, I have a friend who was in that group and it was a cult and they, lost a bunch of money. And he would say, write to them, who was that person? And he's like, because they won't ever give you the names because they're not real people. So being a good follower, that's exactly what I did. And the problem is, imagine you're this person who has a friend who was actually duped and scammed by this cult. You're not going to give them that name because what are they? They're going to come after that person. And that person is a victim. That person probably doesn't want to talk about what happened to them. So that was the advice I was given by the cult leader, was to basically do Darvo again against this person and turn the victim into and accuse them of lying. So if I had actually opened my eyes and done my research, there was some information out there about this being an unhealthy group, or even that it was a cult. I wasn't looking for that. I just thought it was great and turned a blind eye. So if you actually ask them, who opposes this? Who opposes you? Is there anyone critical of it? What are their main objections? And just listen. Maybe you don't have an issue with those things, and that's fine, but at least you're critically thinking about it. Here's a good one. How do you feel about former members of your group? Have you ever sat down to speak with a former member to find out why they left the group? If not, why not? Does your group impose restrictions on communicating with former members? As a former member, I will tell you how they feel about former members. Okay, so myself and every single other person that has left this group and not gone away quietly have been accused of stealing from them. I got the benefit of being accused of a bunch of other things, but that's the number one thing that this cult accuses former members of. So when people left before me, I never sat down to speak with them, and I will tell you why, because you can't be seen or even rumored to be associating with a former member. It would put you into question for where your loyalty lies. And although they won't come out and say you're not allowed to talk to them, it's obvious that it is frowned upon. If you were seen talking to a former member or somebody dubbed you in and said that you were, it would definitely bring you down in the eyes of the leadership. And of course, as a good cult member, you don't want that to happen to you. So you don't. What are 3 things that you least like about the group and its leader? So in a healthy group, there will be things that you disagree with. There will be things that you're allowed to have as dislikes about both the group and its leader. In a cult, you can't. You cannot speak about the things that you dislike about the group or its leadership. If you do, once again, you're knocked down. Okay. What else would you rather do in life than be a member of the group? So in a cult, the members will say nothing. There's nothing else I would rather do. They may even say, I owe the fact that I am happy or successful to this group. That's a big red flag. Okay. Did you take the time to talk with former members and read critical literature about the group before you joined in order to make up your own mind? Is this something you'd be willing to do now? So if you asked any members of the cult that I was in about talking to former members or reading critical literature, I'm going to say probably none of them have done that. And if you ask them, is this something you'd be willing to do now? They probably would say no. But if they were willing to have a conversation with a former member or read critical literature about the group before they joined and then made up their mind and still wanted to join, that's probably a good sign of a healthier group. Any legitimate group will be able to summarize its central beliefs. Destructive cults will not want to do so. So if you ask them about what their beliefs are, for instance, in the cult I was in, it's like, you just have to come and try it out. Just come and try it. Like we can't just talk about consciousness. Like you have to come experience it. Like it's too much to explain. They'll make it very vague, etc. So by saying you have to just try it, the same thing with the hands-on process that they do. It's like you don't want to explain it or talk about what it does or your beliefs about what it can do. You just have to experience it. Why do they want you to come experience it? Because once you do, you're more likely to be indoctrinated into it and have less critical thinking than before you're there. And again, remember sunken cost fallacy that the more time and money you spend on something, the more likely you are to want to stay. So the first set of classes they have are like 4 days long, and you'll hear stories even from some of the leaders of how the first time they went, the first day they were like very critical, and then the second day they were less so, and third, and by the end of the 4th day, they want to sign up for more, and they want to sign up for more, and they're hooked. This is problematic. If you actually think back to your original objections or your original hesitations, those were probably legitimate. You were probably talked out of it or worn down by things like being tired, being hypnotized, having your critical thinking turned off, and over time worn down until the indoctrination, the mind control, and these other tactics of coercion can take place. There's lots of different ways that they do this. Again, that's why I'm doing this entire series, because it's not one thing. A lot of people want me to talk about this smoking gun. Again, it's more like a smoking 12-year shit show. All right. Hope this was helpful. And if you were one of the people that asked me this, I'm not angry with you. I just don't want you to have me give you the reason to leave. Number one, because it needs to be your decision. That's the whole reason you got into this trouble in the first place, is giving someone else power and control over your decisions. But also because if you use my reason and you leave and later you change your mind, guess who you're going to blame? I don't need that responsibility. So please use your own mind, your own critical thinking. I will do my best to share with you the things that woke me up along the way and bring some experts on, which we do have planned, so that they can give you their take on this as well.